Hello everyone, welcome to my review of the finale of Season 1 of Rings of Power. Let's jump into it. Okay, so I'm going to jump into spoilers right away. So if you haven't seen the 8th episode and finale of Rings of Power, go ahead and pause this video. Go watch the episode, come back to this, and watch this video from there. I'll give you a few moments to click off. In the meantime, if you could leave a like and subscribe, that would be amazing. And if you're interested, I made a video recently on what if Rings of Power was a video game. Feel free to click here for it. I'll leave it right here. It's also my most recent video on the channel. If you could go take a look at that, that'd be much appreciated as well. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the episode. So, Rings of Power Finale Episode 8. I'm going to give you some pros, going to give you some cons, and we're going to take it from there. I will have a season review next week for this as well. This is just going to be mostly this episode that we're going to be talking about, and we'll go into the season as a whole on a later date. So, what is my first pro? To be honest, I have only 2 pros this episode. They're very small pros. It's not anything major. The first pro was actually the way they handled Sauron and Galadriel, the reveal, essentially. Not the acts leading up to it, because that was obvious and it wasn't very, it wasn't very well done. I enjoyed when she found out he was Sauron, how they cinematically showed it. They showed him on the boat getting angry and how they portrayed that part. So I enjoyed the individual scenes and how they were acted out and how they looked. The actual writing and everything going up to those moments, not really, but when he is essentially realizing she's not going to turn and going mad and getting mad at her, then that's the part I enjoyed, when you start seeing him get angry and you can see the evil in him. That's what I enjoyed about it. Everything else leading up to it, not so much. Everything else was extremely mid, and we'll go into more detail on that as well. But let's go ahead and jump into my second pro while we're at it. That was with, once again, cinematics and looks-wise, how they portrayed the creating of the rings. I didn't like how they wrote it, how they skipped it, and all of that. But at the very end, when they showed the rings of power, the elven rings of power, I enjoyed the scene where they didn't have any of the characters talk. They just had music and a montage of the actual rings being created. I thought it was actually beautiful how they were creating the rings and everything. And we didn't have to hear stupid dialogue for once, so that's always a positive with this show, because most of the time their dialogue just flops. And so we didn't have to hear anything, so it didn't ruin the scene for me, to be honest. But that's pretty much it with the positives. I don't have any, the episode overall was just extremely mid to me. Everything was just mediocre, and there were some things that were genuinely bad that I didn't like, but it wasn't fully bad as an episode. It was just extremely mediocre, to be honest. Well, let's go ahead and start with the red herring, the failure of a red herring, the stupidity of a red herring, that being the stranger, who is basically 100% guaranteed to be Gandalf at this point. He literally made a joke about his nose. They called him a wizard, and he's Gandalf. And we have to deal with the Harfoots again for this episode, but let's start from the beginning, where he's in the forest and he's looking at a stupid apple that Nori gave him, and it drops and he sees a fake Nori pick it up, and it's the priestesses of Sauron, I guess. We don't really know who they are. And they're like, "Oh, we found you, Sauron." Bam. Red herring. We already know this man is not Sauron. If he was and they actually went through with that, I'm like, that is the worst reveal of Sauron ever. You literally just had some Eminem looking priest go up and be like, "You are Sauron." That's it. No build up, no nothing. We knew he wasn't going to be Sauron. That's obviously Halbrand's job, secondhand Aragorn. But it's just you're going to try throwing that red herring at us at the very last episode. If you were going to make the stranger a red herring for Sauron, then do it earlier. Have a reason. Actually, mention that these people are the priests of Sauron. Say that they're looking for Sauron, maybe, because Sauron has landed or something like that, instead of having them mention themselves and their name for the first time in the final episode for the last like 10 minutes that they're actually in it. We don't know technically they're priests of Sauron unless you do more research on it. No one was there to tell you that. And so now they just expect us to like know and care about it, essentially. If you just even in an earlier episode mentioned them and said they were priests of Sauron, looking for Sauron, then we could kind of plant that this Gandalf stranger is a better red herring, if that was his plan, to be that the whole time, if that makes sense. Getting into the actual interaction they had, though, they're telling him about like this place called Rune that he has to go to unlock his memory and his powers and learn to control them again so that he can rule. And basically that's the same constellation that he sees on their shield, is the same constellation he's been like looking for this whole time. And so he's trying to find Rune, and I guess they can only see it in certain parts of the land, so he's gonna have to go on an adventure eventually. But they're trying to get him to use his powers and control them, and he gets out of control, so they knock him out. And then the little Harfoots come to save the day, of course. And the stupidity with the fighting is just how unrealistic it is sometimes. I'm glad they actually killed Sardok off, not because I wanted necessarily him to die. I mean, all the Harfoots are annoying, so I don't really care if any of them die, but it showed that they actually like went through with it instead of cheaping out and letting him live. So they actually did something decent when it comes to that. But I found it very stupid how Miss Priestess with the throwing knives chucks one at Sardok, but no, she's not going to chuck one also at Nori or the other people. And when she finally does chuck one at the other Harfoot, she like just spares them and like pins the shirt. You're just going to kill Sardok, and you're not going to kill anyone else when you could have easily like killed them all with throwing knives. You could have literally just gone like Batman and like killed everyone. So you're just going to let everyone live just because we want this main character to die. Okay. That's totally fine. It makes total sense how these evil people who are willing to kill him without even question aren't willing to kill a bunch of little ones, but they'll kill Sardok. I mean, because apparently they really need to interrogate some Harfoots, even though they're just here for Sauron, who isn't Sauron. He's the stranger, and we learned is an Istar and a wizard, and all of a sudden gets part of his memory back, and he's totally logical and can speak now. And he comes, saves the day with the little staff, and banishes them. And there's a stupid scene where Nori like comes up like all in tears with like fire behind her. It was just a really like disjointed scene. Like they had certain set pieces, like when the priestess was like blowing everything on fire. It looked really good visually, but when you think about it schematically and how they were playing everything out, it was very stupid. They like after she blew the fire, she left to go find them. And then Nori's just there all of a sudden in the middle of the fire while everyone else is like huddled up in a corner. They like didn't show anything between. The other people just like disappeared all of a sudden. Like, where is everyone? Everything was just extremely disjointed and like it wasn't cohesive. And these priests shouldn't have any issue with killing a few Harfoots. And like they should be able to destroy them pretty easily. And so there's just like all this emotional buildup and everything that wasn't satisfying, because most of the people I know don't like the Harfoots. So why are we going to care about Nori crying over Gandalf, like trying to hand him a staff so he could save the day? And so it's just it wasn't a very satisfying build up. They're trying to build everything up and let everything play out and have these satisfactory endings, but it's not satisfying because we don't have true development and actual writing that made everything good. Like I said, the foundation is everything, but they have no good foundation to go off of. So it's very hollow. There is the emotions that they're trying to play. They play them very like briefly and they're small, but they don't actually like hit you emotionally, is what I'm saying. And that happens later in the episode too. But after Gandalf saves everyone, then good old Sardok is like, let me just look at the sun when I die. And then you see the fastest sunrise in the whole like world that I've ever seen. The sun literally comes up in like 2 seconds after being pitch black, which is fine, whatever. It gives him the emotional moment where they all stare at the sunset while he dies. And then it kind of ends right there with him, and we learn he's not Sauron, just a red herring, like we all thought. And I'll just continue with the Harfoot since we're on that point. Later in the episode, we'd see Nori, she speaking with the dude, and he's like, I gotta go find these people of Rune, learn what to do. And so then she gets convinced by everyone to go with him. There was one stupid line that actually made me laugh out loud. Um, um, Nori's friend, Proudfoot or whatever her name is, she went up to her, and it was supposed to be an emotional moment. She's like, "Why does everyone I love leave me?" And then Nori replies, "Because they have something to learn." So you're saying her dead family left her and they all went to die so they could learn something? They all left her so they could learn something? No, they died. They didn't leave her to learn something, they died. I thought that was so stupid. I actually started laughing because it was like, you had the emotional thing and it was decent emotion. It was fine. And then you say that. So it's just like, really? Anyways, then she leaves. She goes to Gandalf and they walk off into the sunset. He makes a joke about his nose. Obviously, like, he's obviously Gandalf. You gotta follow your nose. And he's trying to give, like, these speeches like Gandalf gives, where he uses people's, like, very full names. Just like, where he's like Merigrin or Pippin when he's giving, like, speeches to him and stuff. So he always uses full names. He always say, like, Frodo Baggins. He'll never just be like Frodo. But yeah, that's basically the Harfoots. Very mediocre. The only good thing about it was the stranger, essentially, but they kind of ruined it by trying to make him a red herring and giving him too easily logic in his head. I feel like he should still need to learn more. I mean, he still needs to, but he just kind of like learned to speak like instantly, and now all of a sudden he's like Mr. Philosopher Aristotle over here with his words. So we'll see what they do with that in season 2, but it was just very mediocre to bad in certain places, and I'm glad we're rid of all the Harfoots except Nori. I mean, dealing with one, I guess, is better than dealing with 20 Harfoots. So if you think about it like that, then it's sort of a win since we get to get rid of the others. I'm really glad her friend didn't come on the adventure too. So that's a win in my book if we're looking into the next seasons. So going into the next thing, let's just talk about it. Halbrand, the elves, Galadriel. Once again, she gets there somehow. Galadriel and Halbrand get there, even though Halbrand is mortally wounded, and they go ahead and he basically convinces Celebrimbor to make the rings. I feel like the issues with this was, once more, they didn't build anything up with Celebrimbor. They showed him in the first episode, and then they showed him like for like 2 minutes throughout the rest of the season. And so if you don't know who Celebrimbor is in the lore, you're like, who is this guy again? All I know that I seen him with Elrond in the beginning, that's all, but we don't know anything else. And so we don't know like who he is, what he does. And then of course, Halbrand, who gets healed, just magically stumbles into the smithing place and knows how to, he acts like he is giving some revelation to the greatest smith that's currently alive to forge these rings, except they don't say rings at the time. He says like a crown, and we could amplify it. So he's kind of like pushing him towards it, even though it should be more of like a tricking thing. And all of a sudden, Galadriel gets suspicious of Halbrand out of nowhere. It was very strange. She never questioned him the last 7 episodes. I feel like if she started questioning him earlier, it wouldn't be so abrupt. But all of a sudden, this episode, she's like, wait, I brought this dude to the Elflands? Why am I trusting him? What's going on? It's like, we just had 7 episodes of you, Galadriel. You didn't question him at all. You excused everything he said. You literally, like he mentioned later, you did everything yourself. He may have been there for the decisions, but you decided everything. You can't blame anything on him. And so it was just very stupid how abrupt she started distrusting him all of a sudden. They didn't give like a specific reasoning either. Like, no one questioned it until she just randomly is like, maybe I shouldn't trust this guy. He knows a lot about forging rings and forging items and smithing all of a sudden. Who is he? What actually is the Southlands? Do they have a king? Oh, I didn't think to research this the whole 7 episodes beforehand, did I? Anyways, they do that. They're going through all the stuff with forging the rings, or what we know of will be the rings. Gil-galad doesn't approve of it. Did they ever get his approval in this episode? I don't remember, because he said no and walked away. So I don't know if they just did it without his approval. I think that he's like, oh, give me 3 months or something like that. So they have 3 months to do it. And I just wish they would have built this up more. I don't see why they had to make it 8 episodes. They could have done it in 8, but better. I feel like we wasted a lot of time in this series. It could have been cut a lot cleaner. If we were here an episode before and had that time to build up with Sauron or Halbrand and Celebrimbor, that would have been a lot better, because it's just like so abrupt how quickly it happens, and it doesn't seem well deserved. And then magically, once of course she looks at the lineage of the Southlands, she sees, oh wait, the sigil that he has is from like 1,000 years ago. It's like, you've been alive this whole time, Galadriel. Shouldn't you know if the Southlands have a king? Shouldn't you have like known that the whole time? Why is it now that you're questioning it? After you risked everything to save this dude? Whatever. And then she questions him. He reveals he's Sauron. The only good thing, like I said, I liked how they portrayed like the actual visuals of the going into like the dream sequences when he was like in her mind. I like that part. Other than that, the dialogue's whatever, and everything else is just extremely mediocre and to bad sometimes. She basically faints, goes in the river. Halbrand runs away to go forge the ring, the one ring that we see at the very end, and Elrond finds her. They make up an idea to forge 3. Instead of 2 crowns, they'll forge 3 rings now. So that's basically the plan. And they do it by melting her dagger. That's supposed to be like some emotional thing because it's from her brother, but I don't really care. They built up this dagger so much, and it's like, it just doesn't hit home with like the writing. That's a lot of the issue, is the foundation itself is so shaky and bad that the payoffs that they have, I see where the payoffs are coming from, but I don't agree with them, and they don't hit me like they're intended to. Eventually they forge the rings. I really liked how it looked when they were doing the rings. I love actual smithing and everything, how it looks. Just the whole aspect of it. Like personally, I like how smithing looks, so I enjoyed seeing those visuals of them melting it down and sending it through all the mortars and everything. And then finally we end the episode with Elrond learning who Sauron is and learning that Galadriel kind of like hid everything, but he didn't like reveal it at the end to them. So I guess that's something season 2 we have to look at. And then we also see Halbrand, now Sauron as we know, go to Mount Doom, and he's staring at it because he's going to forge the ring. And not to mention, I forgot about Numenor. They're so inconsequential. But Pharazôn took over Numenor basically overnight. I think the king died as well. Don't know exactly. We never revealed that Isildur's still alive. He's obviously still alive. He has to cut the ring off Sauron. So in season 2, they're probably going to forge the rings either for men or for dwarves. I think I see what they're doing with their seasons now. This season is the 3 rings for the elves. Then they're going to do the rings for the men, the rings for the dwarves, and then the 1 ring to rule them all together. 4 seasons. And I think they said they only needed like 4 or 5 seasons too. So they're going to split it up that way, and then like the fallout of it, the drowning in Numenor and all that stuff. Which, how are they going to get Sauron back to Numenor? Because the whole point, his body was destroyed in Numenor. So how are they going to get him back there? We'll see. I don't know. Anyways, though, overall for this episode, it's just like a 4 or 5 out of 10. It's very average, mediocre. It was supposed to be like uplifting and living, and that's just the season overall is just very mediocre, average fantasy. And what really brings it to average is the visuals, the writing and everything is actually kind of subpar compared to other stuff. So it's just a very average show. If you love it, I understand, but personally, it's just whatever. I'll keep watching because it's Lord of the Rings and I love Lord of the Rings, but honestly, I'm not going to like be kind to it or pretend like it's amazing. It has a lot to do, needs to improve on a lot. Hopefully season 2 can get better, especially with the writing, because I feel like that's where it's mostly lacking. But we'll see. They didn't prove us right now, so we'll see if they prove us right in season 2. Tell me what you thought overall, though. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments down below. And that is it for this episode. I'll see you guys next week if you want for a season review overall. I'll talk about everything with every plot line, how they handled everything. And like I mentioned before, I do have a recent video on if Rings of Power was a video game that I worked on. It took me a little while to make that, so if you can go and check that out, that'd be much appreciated. You don't need to, but once more, if you could do that or leave a like and subscribe, that'd be amazing. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.